battle, when the mangoes came, they were black. And the people over there, they assumed that all the blood that had soaked into that ground had got, had sort of the tree had soaked that blood up. And that's why the mangoes were black.
Oh my God.
When the battle took place,
Mm-hmm.
those hundreds of men, women, and children were all there with the Maratha. When the army was defeated,
Mm-hmm.
the Afghans massacred all those unarmed people. And that garden today, the battleground of Panipat, of the Third Battle of Panipat, when I was walking through that garden, I was only trying to remember all the innocent lives which had been lost. That Parvatibai went to Panipat with Sadashivrao. She was there during the battle, and she was one of the few survivors. That was bombed every night by Pakistani airplanes.
Every
My
night.
mother, every night for about 6 or 7 nights, and my mother and I and my brother, we sat cowering in a trench all night. And that experience, the bombs falling, the whole ground vibrating, and the fear, I have not forgotten even today.
मराठा एम्पायर नाम सुना है ना, मगर बस नाम ही सुना है, कहानी नहीं सुनी है। आज के पॉडकास्ट में हम मराठा एम्पायर को पूरी तरह से समझेंगे। द राइज, द इमोशन इन बिटवीन, द रीजन दे सस्टेन्ड एंड द फॉल। एक मराठा एम्पायर जो अपने समय में सबसे पावरफुल फोर्स हुआ करता था, स्ट्रैटेजी में टॉप, वॉरफेयर में टॉप। फिर बैटल ऑफ पानीपत में ऐसा क्या हुआ कि सब कुछ बिखर कर रह गया। बस तलवारें नहीं टूटी, एक पूरा साम्राज्य टूट गया। और इस कहानी में एक कैरेक्टर जिनका नाम पार्वतीबाई। नाम नहीं सुनाना, कैसे सुनोगे? शी इज लॉस्ट in the pages of history. No history book ever wrote her. Sutapa Basu ma'am decided to write the story from her perspective. Tune in now and enjoy the Exploring Personalities podcast with Sutapa Basu in 3, 2, 1.
So hello, good evening, ma'am. बहुत दिनों के वेट के बाद finally we are doing the podcast. So how are you?
I'm fine, I'm great, and
Okay.
I'm looking forward to this podcast.
Right. Same. I'm very excited about it because it's not every day you get a guest who writes about, such fierce women. So in this conversation, we'll talk about Parvati Bai a little later. She'll be the main focus of the podcast. However, to set the stage, I would like to talk about the Maratha Empire first. Okay, the 18th century, it was everything about Marathas. So tell us both their military tactics and beyond that.
So you're right. The Maratha Samrajya at that time, during the 18th century, at the zenith of its power,
Mm-hmm.
actually extended from Attock, which is now
Okay.
in Pakistan,
Okay.
to beyond the Tungabhadra river,
Okay. Okay.
below that. And in the west, it was from Kutch to
Mm-hmm.
nearly Bengal.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the extent of the Maratha Empire, and it was one of the most powerful empires of those days.
Right. Right.
So there were many factors, which actually contributed to this rise of the Maratha Empire. One of the most important one was the fact that the Mughal Empire was declining. So,
Okay.
after Aurangzeb, many of the governor generals who had been given responsibility for certain parts of the Mughal Empire
Okay.
actually created their own fiefdoms. They just cut out that and made their own kingdoms over there.
Okay.
So the Mughal Empire was definitely getting broken up,
Mm-hmm.
and there was no empire, in fact,
Mm-hmm.
pan India.
Mm-hmm.
So the Marathas, who were getting stronger by the day, were
Mm-hmm.
perfect
Okay.
to fill that vacuum.
Okay.
So that was a very important reason, which is the political reason.
Mhm.
The other thing was that the Marathas controlled all the trade, the trade routes and the ports in the
Okay.
Deccan.
Mhm.
So they were able to gather a lot of wealth,
Okay.
which helped them to have an army and
Mhm.
also to uh, go out, and capture territory.
Okay.
So that was another reason.
Mhm.
The third reason, a very important reason, in fact, was the fact that economic disparity
Mhm.
among the Marathas was
Mhm.
very limited.
Okay.
So that created a kind of, self-respect
Mhm.
among the Maratha people, and there were no potential economic exploiters,
Okay.
and all that contributed to a unity among the
Mhm.
Maratha people.
Mhm. Mhm.
So these were some very, very important factors.
Okay.
The other important factor was the geography. So the mountainous region, the plateaus of Maharashtra, they formed a natural defensive
Mhm.
advantage
Right.
against the conventional army,
Right. Right.
and also they bolstered the skills of the Marathas in the guerrilla warfare,
Mhm. Right.
which was something very new, to
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
typical battles which were actually fought on plains,
Right.
frontal battles.
Right.
So that was one more reason. The Marathas used those mountains to their advantage. They
Mhm.
built forts on
Mhm.
the peaks of the mountains,
Mhm.
which were so strong, the defenses became so strong that very few armies could actually reach those
Right.
forts, or
Right.
lay a siege to those forts.
Right.
So that was another very, very important reason.
Mhm. Mhm.
Another thing that was very important was the social influences that was happening. There was a lot of social upheaval that was happening in
Okay.
the country at that time,
Mhm.
and one of them was the fact that there was this bhakti movement which had
Okay.
started,
Mhm.
and there were preachers like Tukaram and Eknath, who
Mhm.
were preaching about spirituality, about
Mhm.
devotion,
Mhm.
and that also brought the Marathas together, in a
Okay.
kind of same kind of religious fervor.
Mhm.
And something that was really very, very, very important was the concept
Mhm.
of Hindawa Samrajya, which is
Okay.
actually the Hindu self rule.
Hindus. Right.
Yeah. So this was a concept. It was actually floated by Shivaji Maharaj,
Mhm.
and that sort of gave the Marathas a kind of national identity.
Right.
And that is something with that, with the goal, that aim of creating a independent Hindu state.
Mhm.
They resisted not just the Mughals, but later
Mhm.
on the British as well.
Right.
So
Right.
definitely these factors helped. And
Mhm.
of course, one can't say enough about the leadership qualities and the military prowess of the Marathas.
Right.
And the most important of them was, of course, Shivaji Maharaj, Chhatrapati
Uh-huh.
Shivaji Maharaj,
Uh-huh.
who is credited to be the founder of the
Mhm.
Maratha
Mhm.
Empire.
Mhm.
So no, his strategic leadership, his military tactics,
Mhm.
and this entire vision
Mhm.
of having a Hindawa Samrajya was something that absolutely inspired the Marathas.
Okay.
And that was very important because it brought them together, and it gave them a kind of goal, a kind of aim, that this is what they have to do.
Mhm.
Second is, of course, I told you about their forts, and
Right.
of course their guerrilla warfare.
Mhm.
Now, the Marathas, they would ride these mountain horses, which were
Okay.
not very big and magnificent. They were very short
Mhm.
and not so good looking as the kind of those
Okay.
huge horses which were the Arab horses, basically,
Arab
which were
horse. Right.
used by the
Right.
Mughals.
Ah.
But these mountain horses were very strong, and they were very sure footed. So
Okay.
these soldiers would ride these horses. They would simply come down a ravine
Uh-huh.
in small groups,
Uh-huh.
attack the
Right.
the enemy, and they would
Right.
again disappear.
Right.
And before the the conventional military army would realize what has happened, they had already gone.
Uh-huh.
So this was a very, very useful tactic
Mm-hmm.
that Shivaji has used, and even the people who came after him, the Peshwas, they
Mm-hmm.
have used it to
Mm-hmm.
great advantage.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that all this actually contributed to the conquests, to
Mm-hmm.
expanding the Maratha Empire, and becoming such a powerful entity
Mm-hmm.
in 18th century India.
Right, right. This is amazing. You talked about guerrilla warfare tactics. So before the Marathas introduced it, why was it not introduced before? Was it because of the ethics that we should not, attack the enemy by hiding, by camouflaging? So was it because the ethics? What do you think about? Because you have researched about it a lot. So what can be the reasons why were guerrilla tactics not used before?
Number one is the geographic reason.
Okay.
So, guerrilla warfare, even today,
Mm-hmm.
guerrilla warfare is successful only when there is a lot of cover.
Okay.
So whether it's forest, whether it's mountains,
Mm-hmm.
that is the only places that guerrilla warfare is
Sure,
actually
sure,
successful.
sure.
So the Marathas had the geographic advantage.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right about the other part that,
Mm-hmm.
in those days, battles were held on huge battlegrounds. I mean,
Right.
people would have seen those movies where you have two armies standing face to face, and then the trumpets would be blown, and then they would clash.
Right, right.
But yeah, and much of the Mughals, the Mughal army, in fact, were used to the plains of North India.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
North India has these huge plains,
Mm-hmm.
and the people, the enemy that they mostly fought were the Rajputs. So
Okay.
Rajputs were very, they were very proud of the fact that we are very ethical and we are very noble, and they would always fight
Right,
face to face.
right,
They would never hide and fight.
right.
But these Marathas were very worldly wise, much more worldly wise than
Right,
the Rajputs.
right.
And they said, okay, if this works for us, why
Uh-huh.
not?
Right, right, right.
So I
Because
think that is the reason.
India is a peace-loving country, right? It has always been that way. But the enemy, they are taking advantage of that, right? Because the Indian soldiers, they are sleeping at night at that time, and they come and attack without a warning. Because I have heard that the rules were that after the sunset, you were not allowed to fight. But
Absolutely.
enemies use that against us, then why not we?
Exactly. Everything is fair in love and war, they say.
Right, right, definitely, definitely. So we were talking about economics, okay, that how in Maratha kingdom there was economic stability. There was no much differences between the people and their maybe salaries and all, and that resulted in more unity, more prowess, and more growth. Can that be a reason why India is not being able to grow exponentially? Because आज के भारत में इकोनॉमिक इंस्टेबिलिटी बहुत है, कोई बहुत ज्यादा कमा रहा है, कोई बहुत ज्यादा कम कमा रहा है, किसी को खाने के लिए पैसे नहीं है, एंड समवन हैज सो मच, है ना, दैट लाइक 50-60% ऑफ द पॉपुलेशन से ज्यादा एक शख्स के पास पैसा है. So tell us about that. Is there a reason why economic instability is the reason why growth is not as good as it should be?
Absolutely. I totally agree on that. Yes, India does have a lot of, the economic status of the people are definitely not on one scale.
Mm-hmm.
There are people who are below the poverty line, and there are people who have got too much.
Mm-hmm.
I completely agree. And this instability also brings about a feeling of, the national feeling, the feeling of nationality is
Mm-hmm.
lost. The reason is this: because the people who are looking for three meals a day, they
Mm-hmm.
don't have time to,
Right.
or the mental ability to grasp concepts like nationality,
Mm-hmm.
right?
For sure,
And
for sure.
whether India should go for war, should go to war or not.
Right.
Right. So that is, these kind of abstractions and these kind of reflections are the indulgence
Mm-hmm.
of those people who have enough,
Mm-hmm.
who are self-sufficient, right? So
Right.
yeah, you're right about that, that economic instability definitely stops growth.
Mm-hmm.
And I think right now the government recognizes that,
Okay.
and I think they are trying their best to bring up the people who they need on
Mm-hmm.
on an evil even a playing field so that the economy can prosper.
Right,
Yes.
right. Makes sense. Makes sense. Now that we have talked about Shivaji Maharaj, because Shivaji Maharaj के बिना Maratha Kingdom ही नहीं है ना? Because
Hmm.
so there is this new movie that came, Chhawa. Did you watch it?
Yeah, I did.
So what are your reviews? Because you are someone who has done ground study on it, okay? Who has studied Maratha
Hmm.
Kingdom. So how how closely it resembles the original thing that happened? How good is it?
So it is right that Sambhaji tried his best to continue with the the same conquests and the same resistance against the Mughal emperor.
Mm-hmm.
At that time, Aurangzeb. Yes, he did try that, and the fact is that he was captured
Okay.
and he was eventually killed.
Mm-hmm.
So those facts, those historical facts, remain the same in Chava. But of course, it's eventually a Bollywood movie, so it needs to have
Okay.
all the the what should I say, Salman Khan kind of tactics and fights where people are jumping and all that, so all that is there.
Uh,
But it does, the basic facts are the same. Yes, it has
okay.
adhered to that.
So what do you think? More movies should be made on all these topics, because although things get twisted a little bit, but the story comes out, right? People get to know about that Sambhaji Maharaj was someone, है ना? शायद उसको
Mhm.
ओवर ग्लोरीफाई नहीं किया जा रहा है जितना हमारे टेक्स्ट बुक में किया जाना चाहिए था, एंड थ्रू मूवीज पीपल आर गेटिंग टू नो अबाउट इट. सो
Mhm.
शुड मोर मूवीज बी मेड?
डेफिनेटली, मैं तो कहती हूँ कि जितने फिल्म्स हो, लेकिन जो फिल्म मेकर है,
हाँ हाँ.
that person should do enough research.
ओके.
And while I agree that mass appeal होना चाहिए मूवीज में, बट हिस्टोरिकल फैक्ट्स को डिस्टॉर्ट नहीं करना चाहिए.
हम्म.
एंड दैट इज समथिंग आई एम वेरी वेरी पैशनेट अबाउट, बिकॉज मेरे जो बुक्स हैं
हम्म.
उसमें आफ्टर आई डू माई रिसर्च आई विल नेवर चेंज अ हिस्टोरिकल फैक्ट. वॉट एवर माई book reveals,
हम्म.
those are factual revelations. I
हम्म.
agree that um, I mean sometimes people ask me a lot of questions saying that इसमें फैक्ट कितना है और फिक्शन कितना है.
राइट.
लेकिन अगर आप हिस्ट्री पढ़ेंगे,
हम्म.
यू विल रियलाइज दैट हिस्टोरियंस जो लिखते हैं वो
हम्म.
किसी एविडेंस के बेसिस पे लिखते हैं,
हम्म.
राइट. लेकिन देर आर टाइम्स जब
हम्म.
एविडेंस अवेलेबल नहीं है.
राइट.
सो अगर आपने सारे फैक्ट्स को एक ना लीनियर तरीके से आपने पैटर्न बनाया तो
ठीक है.
आपको गैप्स दिखेंगे.
ठीक है.
Those gaps obviously are the places where a historian has not been able to find evidence, some
हम्म.
kind of a timeline gap,
हम्म.
right? मैं क्या करती हूँ, मैं वो सारे फैक्ट्स को सामने रख के वो जो पैटर्न में जो गैप्स हैं
हम्म.
उनको मैं यूज करती हूँ टू वीव माई फिक्शन.
ओके. ओके. गेट इट.
जस्ट लाइक हम लोग एम्ब्रॉयडरी करते नहीं है,
हाँ हाँ.
तो उसी तरीके से मैं अपना जो फिक्शन है उसको एम्ब्रॉयडर करती हूँ थ्रू
हम्म.
द फैक्ट्स,
हम्म. राइट.
सो
राइट.
दैट फैक्ट्स डोंट चेंज,
हम्म.
बट there's a story
राइट. राइट. आई अंडरस्टैंड.
behind it. Yeah,
And when there is a story, people connect to it even more.
absolutely,
Right.
absolutely. I try to
Right.
bring in the emotions.
हाँ हाँ.
I try to bring in descriptions
Right.
ताकि मैं जो रीडर है उसको मैं लेके जा सकूं
हाँ
into
हाँ.
that era,
हाँ हाँ.
into that emotion,
हाँ
जो
हाँ.
passions जो उस
हाँ
era में होते थे, ताकि वो रीडर को लगे कि मेरे चारों तरफ ही ये हो रहा है.
हाँ.
तभी
Right.
तो ही तभी तो अपील करेगा स्टोरी, है ना.
Definitely, definitely. Because when I received the book and I, started at the first page, the way the thing started, even the first line, it was like so tempting that I could not stop myself from reading ahead. But agar wahi cheez, if it is put in a boring way, nobody will flip the
हम्म.
pages and go ahead and know the story,
मैं तो
right?
यही कहती हूँ कि लोग लोग सोचते हैं हिस्ट्री बहुत बोरिंग है. हिस्ट्री बड़ा
हाँ हाँ.
ड्राई है, उसमें सिर्फ नाम के लिस्ट्स आते हैं, बैटल्स के डेट्स आते हैं और हमें सब याद करना पड़ता है. सो
हाँ.
एवरीबडी फाइंड वांट्स टू रन अवे फ्रॉम हिस्ट्री, बट नो,
Right.
हिस्ट्री इज एक्चुअली अ स्टोरी, और
Right.
बहुत ही सुंदर स्टोरी है. उसको
ठीक है.
हमें बस स्टोरी के तरीके से लेना चाहिए, एंड देन ओनली वी विल बी एबल टू एंजॉय इट. एंड
हम्म.
दैट इज यूजुअली माय aim when I write a historical narrative. मैं चाहती हूँ कि जो रीडर है उसको मैं खींच के लेके आऊँ उस एरा में,
Mm-hmm.
उस सीन में.
Right, right,
एंड आई डू अ लॉट ऑफ रिसर्च फॉर
right,
दैट. मैं
right,
अगर जब आपने पार्वती बाई पढ़ी होगी तो आपको आपने नोटिस किया होगा कि मैंने बहुत सारे मराठी वर्ड्स यूज किए हैं,
right,
सो
right.
that atmosphere is made. I need to
Mm-hmm.
create that ambience, that atmosphere जो उस टाइम होता
Right.
था. Like I have also used a lot of cuisine, Marathi cuisine.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Right.
है ना, सारे बहुत सारे डिशेस की ऐसे भी खाते थे, ये भी करते थे. दैट इज
Mm-hmm.
ऑल एंड आई हैव टू डू रिसर्च फॉर दैट. मैं कहीं और से नहीं कर, आई कांट जस्ट पुल इट आउट फ्रॉम माय इमेजिनेशन. आई हैव टू
For
रिसर्च, आई हैव
sure,
टू
for
फाइंड आउट
sure.
कि एक्चुअली हाँ ये होता था, तभी मैं
Uh-huh.
उसको उस तरीके से डिस्क्राइब कर सकती हूँ.
Mm-hmm. Right,
So,
right,
so that is always my intention, that I
right.
make the reader live history.
Wow, this is amazing perspective. Now that you write all this book, है ना, you have written about war so many times. You have written about Genghis
Hmm.
Khan. You have written about the Battle of Panipat. So, how does a war affect mankind? Because now that there has been an attack on Pahalgam, a very devastating attack, we cannot speak enough about it. There are
Hmm.
talks about a war happening. How does a war change a mankind?
War and battles, they change the humanity, the
Mm-hmm,
people who live around that area.
mm-hmm,
They change the way people think.
mm-hmm.
And I will give you one more example from Parvatibai, in fact from my research.
Okay,
So when I was writing Parvatibai, I went and visited Panipat,
okay,
जहाँ पे ये
okay.
battle had
Mm-hmm,
actually happened.
mm-hmm.
Right now, it is a park. It's a beautiful park,
Okay,
which is maintained by the actually by the, I think, Sindhyas. They maintain it,
okay.
and in the center there is a kind of plaque,
Mm-hmm,
and on that plaque, the entire the history that the battle took place here, all
okay,
that is written over there.
okay.
What struck me when I was researching for this battle is
Mm-hmm,
not only soldiers
okay.
and their families,
Mm-hmm,
but hundreds of pilgrims
okay.
had accompanied the Maratha army to the north of India,
Wow.
because they wanted to visit the sacred Hindu sites, Haridwar, Kurukshetra,
Mm-hmm,
and journeying, traveling from Pune
mm-hmm.
to the north of India was not easy.
Right.
And it was also very risky because there were so many dacoits,
Mm-hmm,
on the way.
mm-hmm,
So they thought to themselves,
mm-hmm.
if a Maratha army जा रही है,
Right.
तो हम भी इनके साथ चलते ना.
ठीक है.
So what happened is, when the battle took place,
Mm-hmm,
those hundreds of men, women, and children were all there with the Maratha army. When the army was defeated,
mm-hmm.
the Afghans massacred all those unarmed people. And that garden today, the battleground of Panipat, of the Third Battle of Panipat, when I was walking through that garden, I was only trying to remember all the innocent lives which had been lost over there. Almost as though the blood had soaked into the ground. Now there is a very unusual thing in that garden. If you go there, you will find the garden is called Kala Am Park. So
Okay.
obviously everybody would be curious कि इसका नाम
Mm-hmm.
काला आम क्यों रखा है.
Right.
So when I spoke to the locals, and there is also a kind of a stone
Slab.
which tells
Right.
you the story.
Mm-hmm.
There was a mango tree there, a
Okay.
very big mango tree.
I'm already getting the
After the battle,
goosebumps.
yeah, after the battle, when the mangoes came, they were black. And the
God.
people over there, they assumed that all the blood that had soaked into that ground had got, had sort of the tree had soaked that blood up, and that's why the mangoes were black.
Oh my God.
And after 1 or 2 seasons, so nobody would eat those mangoes,
Mm-hmm.
because they felt that those mangoes are cursed.
Right.
After a few seasons, the tree fell down.
Okay.
And the local people over there, they broke pieces of that tree and they have kept it in their homes. So I actually saw pieces of that tree.
Wow.
Imagine. So this is what happens, and no one likes a battle. No one likes war.
Mm-hmm.
So for them, this tree was a symbol of what, how tragic war can be.
Hmm. Right. Right. That is what they say, no?
So,
Because if we don't know about the Third World War, but if
hmm,
a Fourth World War happens, it would be fought using stones and sticks because nothing would be left.
yeah, that exactly,
Right.
exactly. Uh, since you're talking about war, let me give you a personal experience.
Okay.
Uh, My father was in the army.
Wow. Okay.
So during 1965 war,
Mm-hmm.
he was at Khemkaran
Okay.
at the border
Mm-hmm.
fighting.
Mm-hmm.
And I think my age must have been about 8 or 9 years old.
Okay.
I have a brother who
Mm.
was about 5 years old at that time.
Okay.
With my mother,
Mm-hmm.
we stayed in the Ambala cantonment.
Okay.
So my father was based in Ambala, but
Mm-hmm.
he had to go ahead to the border for the war.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we stayed over there.
Mm-hmm.
And Ambala had a airstrike.
Okay.
It had an airfield, you know,
Okay.
that was bombed every night by Pakistani airplanes.
Every night.
My mother, every night for about 6 or 7 nights. And my mother and I and my brother, we sat cowering in a trench all night. And that experience, the bombs falling, the whole ground vibrating, uh, and the fear, I have not forgotten even today. So that is how people who live in a battle zone are affected. It stays with them for life, the
Right.
trauma.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Just listening to it, I'm getting goosebumps. My heart is living its places, and you have lived that. And
Yeah,
thousands of people whose parents are in army or armed forces, they go through that every single day.
absolutely.
So salute to them. I mean, salute to you, salute to your father. I mean, the work the Indian Army and all the armed forces do for us, we cannot thank them enough. There are no words, literally. Right. Now that you discussed the Third Battle of Panipat, it is known for its tragic end. But I would like to know from your side, how did it come to that tragic end? What were the ambitions of the Marathas, and what happened after that?
Okay, so the third battle of Panipat, when I start explaining about it, we need to know the main players in it.
Okay,
So let's start with the Mughals.
ठीक है.
Okay, so the Empire was crumbling
Mhm,
completely.
mhm,
They were all the time. I mean, the emperor
mhm,
was a very weak person. He was, and every emperor who came after Aurangzeb, they were extravagant, they were weak, they were only indulgent,
mhm.
and they could not hold the power of the empire
Right.
around them.
Okay.
So the power passed into the hands of the Wazir, the
Mhm.
chief minister,
Okay.
and the Mir Baksh, who was
Mhm.
the treasurer.
ठीक है.
Okay, so this is what happened. They became more and more powerful, and the emperor became a figurehead.
Mhm,
So the emperor, because he was so afraid of the kind of, and the small kingdoms which the Mughals had subjugated till now,
mhm.
they started raising their heads.
Okay.
So the Mughal emperor was so afraid
Mhm.
that he would be attacked either by these smaller rulers or by some external power, that
Okay.
he asked the Marathas to sign a
Mhm.
treaty with him
Okay.
in which the Marathas would protect the Mughal Empire.
Okay.
Okay. So this is the state of the Mughal Empire.
Okay.
Now let's come to the next player, a very important player, which is the Marathas.
Okay.
Now, as I told you, that the Marathas constantly were increasing their territory. They were
Mhm.
moving out of Maharashtra,
Mhm.
and conquering territory all over because they had this goal of the Hindava Samrajya, that
Right.
they wanted to create an independent human Hindu state.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a lacuna in the way they were conquering.
Okay.
What they did was they would conquer a land,
Mm-hmm.
they would annex it,
Okay.
and then they would place a official over there who
Mm-hmm.
would collect the tributes
ठीक है.
from the people.
ठीक है.
They would tax the people, they would collect the tribute from the ruler, and they would send it back to the Peshwa
Okay.
at that time.
Okay.
But they never thought about improving the lives of the people
Mm-hmm.
who were in that area.
Oh,
So
okay.
slowly, what happened? No, so slowly, what happened? The people started looking at the Marathas as just conquerors, as kind of looters,
Oh, okay.
and and they started resenting them.
Okay.
Okay, so this was the situation that the Marathas were in at that time during the just before the battle.
Okay.
Now we come to the third player, the Afghans.
Okay.
Now, Ahmed Shah Abdali, who was the ruler of Afghanistan at
Mm-hmm.
that time, as a young man, he had traveled with Nadir Shah to India many times. I
Okay.
mean, he came with the army of Nadir Shah.
ठीक है.
And at that time, he saw how rich India was.
Mm-hmm.
So, when he became the ruler of Afghanistan, he decided, let me raid India
Okay.
and let me raid the Mughal Empire
ठीक
so
है.
that I can get the riches and wealth. And he conducted several raids.
Okay.
Every year he would come
ठीक है.
and he would loot the entire north of India.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, once the agreement had been signed with the Marathas, now the Marathas were under pressure when Abdali came to protect the Mughal Empire.
Okay.
Right. Now, the forces which were already in north of India, because obviously there were forces who were collecting the taxes from the people, who were
Mm-hmm.
sending the tributes to the Peshwa, they tried to stop Abdali many times, and sometimes they were successful, and sometimes they were not.
Okay.
Finally, when there was this rumor that
Mm-hmm.
Abdali is coming
Mm-hmm.
for really another raid,
Okay.
the Mughal emperor sent a message to the Marathas. And then it was that the Peshwa at that time, Balaji Rao, decided that I will send a Maratha army. The general was Sadashivrao,
Okay.
who was a very renowned Maratha general by then. He was called Bhau by
Okay.
all the people of the empire.
Mm-hmm.
He was sent with the Maratha army to protect the
Okay.
Mughals and oust the invader.
ठीक है.
He was an invader,
Mm-hmm.
Abdali. So this was the situation. Now we come to the real catalyst, the
Okay.
Rohillas.
Mm-hmm.
Who are the Rohillas? The Rohillas were Pashtuns,
Okay.
tribals
Okay.
from the mountains of Afghanistan,
Mm-hmm.
whom Aurangzeb had brought in as mercenaries
Okay. Mercenaries.
to
Okay.
fight in his army.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm. But those people finally became a part of the population.
Okay.
They settled in the valley between um, Yamuna and the Ganga.
Mm-hmm.
There's a kind of a valley between the two rivers, which
Okay.
is very fertile
Mm-hmm.
and beautiful, like very fertile, very
Okay.
good for crops. So they
Okay.
settled in that, and they started calling themselves the Rohillas, and that place was called Rohilakant.
Okay.
Now, after a while, they became so powerful
Mm-hmm.
that they refused to give tributes to the Mughal emperor.
Oh, okay.
And one person among them was a man called Najibullah Khan.
ठीक है.
Now, Najib was actually a Yusufzai Afghan. He
Mm-hmm.
had come as a foot soldier,
Mm-hmm.
but he acquired a lot of land and eventually he became a leader of the Rohillas.
Okay.
In fact, he built a city he built the fort of Pathargarh,
Okay.
and he called the city Najibabad.
Mm-hmm.
His aspiration was to sit on the Mughal throne.
ठीक
Okay.
है.
Now he knew that the Marathas were very strong. There was no way that he could alone fight them. So
Mm-hmm.
what he did was he invited Abdali
Okay.
into the country,
Okay.
telling him that the Muslim community is in a danger here
Ah, so
because of
so
the
it
Marathas.
is working from that time only, Hindu versus Muslim?
Ab- Absolutely, from that time.
Okay. हाँ.
And he said that the Mughals are too weak; they cannot protect this community. So you have to come.
Mhm.
It's like a jihad. You have
Okay.
to come here,
Mhm.
and you have to save us.
Mhm.
So Abdali got this invitation from uh, Najib, and he decided to come.
Okay.
At the same time, do you remember the smaller rulers, the
Mhm. Mhm.
Rajputs, the
Mhm.
Jats,
Mhm.
uh, the Sikhs also? All these people were also resented the Marathas.
Okay.
They said ki these people from the Deccan, they come and they are conquering and they are dominating us.
Mhm.
They also sent letters to Abdali. Ki
Oh.
come over. We will
Okay.
we will support you.
Okay.
So what happened at the end? When the Marathas actually came face to face with Abdali,
Mhm.
they asked all these rulers who were Hindus
Mhm.
to help them, to support them,
Mhm.
but they did not do so. Instead, they plotted against them.
Oh.
And
Okay.
then there was Najib, who was constantly filling the ears of Abdali. Because Abdali, when he reached here, when he came here and he saw the Maratha army, he realized that they were very strong, very well armed. It was not going to be easy to defeat them. So he was under the impression that I think I should go back
Okay.
to Afghanistan. And his advisors and his soldiers, they all wanted that. But Najib kept on pushing him, kept
Okay.
on telling him, if you go away, you will be leaving the Muslims to their
Mhm.
tragic fate.
Mhm.
The
Mhm.
Marathas are going to massacre us,
Mhm.
and all this.
Mhm.
So that is why Abdali stayed back in India. He stayed back for nearly a year, out
Mhm.
of which about 8 months was the siege
Okay.
of Panipat,
Okay.
when he surrounded the Maratha army, but he did not attack them
Okay.
because he was too afraid
Mhm.
of their might.
Mhm.
It was the Marathas, because obviously in that siege, food was not coming in, weapons were not coming in, people had started starving, and it was a huge population because the
Right.
pilgrims were also there.
Right.
Finally, the Marathas decided that we have to get out. They had this thing कि अगर हमें मरना है तो हम युद्ध में
लड़के
मरेंगे,
मरे. Right.
हम नहीं खा के नहीं मरेंगे.
Mhm.
And that is why they came out. And
Mhm.
in the battle, Abdali nearly lost the battle
Okay.
because of the aggressive nature of the Marathas, because of the kind of strategy they had,
Mhm.
and because there was a wave of Maratha soldiers coming. And
Okay.
In fact, Abdali's troops got so scared that they started running back. And Abdali
Okay.
sent a message out to his, he had the special guard. He sent a message out to them, stop them. जो नहीं रोकेगा ना उसको मारो, मार दो उसको.
Okay. Mhm.
And that is how he brought his soldiers back to fight. Now, still, why did the battle turn away? The result of the battle, why was it such a debacle? The reason is the Sardars, the Maratha Sardars, who mainly the Sardars who were from North India, who had settled in North India, they
Mhm.
had actually become very corrupt.
Oh.
Instead of sending the tribute and taxes back to the Peshwa, they
Mhm.
started taking it themselves. They built mansions. They started having alliances with these Rajputs, with the
Okay.
Jats,
Mhm.
which the Peshwa did not know anything about, and nor did
Okay.
Sadashivrao.
Mhm.
When Sadashivrao wanted their support in the battle, these Sardars turned their backs. They rode away from the battlefield.
Oh.
That was one of the most important reasons why Marathas lost the battle.
Mhm.
Sadashivrao was killed in the battle. The Peshwa's son, just a 17-year-old boy called Vishwasrao, he was
Mhm.
also killed in this battle. One of the few survivors of this battle was Parvatibai,
Right.
who returned to Puri.
Mhm.
So that is the story
Wow.
of the Battle of
Amazing.
Panipat.
Amazing. मतलब जो रामायण में हुआ, घर का भेदी लंका ढाया. The same thing
Exactly,
happened here.
absolutely. And you know something, Ankit, this is actually a truth which has been constantly playing
Mm-hmm.
over centuries,
Mm-hmm.
over time.
Mm-hmm.
It's always your own people who stab you at the back, in the back.
Right, right, right. This is so true, you know. They say there is this quote, you know, enemies are not very far ahead of you. They are someone very close to you.
Hmm, very true.
Right. So now that you have mentioned Parvatibai, let's bring her into the picture. Now, Parvatibai accompanied Sadashivrao Bhau to the battlefield. Okay, a
Hmm,
bold and unusual move because usually ऐसा होता नहीं था. So
hmm.
tell me about the personality of Parvati Bai. How was she? How did she grew up and become this fierce lady?
So, first and foremost, Ankit, I want to correct one idea. It is not that the Maratha ladies did not go to the battle,
Okay.
because look at Bajirao Peshwa.
Ah,
Mastani
right,
accompanied him to all the battles,
right.
and even Gopika Bai, she did go to the some of the campaigns of Balaji Rao.
Okay,
So it was not very unusual for the wife to go.
okay.
But all the way from Pune to the north of India or Delhi,
Hmm.
that was something very unusual. And why?
Okay.
And what was there about Parvati Bai that she could do this? So let me start telling you about Parvati Bai. I know you've read the book, and I hope other readers also read the book, because they'll be able to actually
Right,
feel,
right,
the emotion that is there. So Parvati Bai came from very
right.
humble origins. Her father was only a clerk in the
Uh-huh.
household of Chhatrapati Shahu. And
Right.
somehow Chhatrapati Shahu, he saw this little girl, and he liked her very much, and so he adopted her as his daughter.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
when Balaji Rao was looking for a wife for his cousin Sadashivrao,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it was Chhatrapati Sahu who said that this young girl is there. Why don't you get your cousin
Right.
married to her?
Right.
And that is how
Mm-hmm.
Parvati Bai, at the age of only 10 years, came to Shanivar Vata.
Mm-hmm.
And from the first day, she faced the politics of Shanivar Vata,
Okay.
because and the person who actually initiated that politics was Gopika Bai, the
Okay.
Peshwa's wife.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, all through my research about Gopika Bai, it's very clearly said that Gopika Bai was always, envied, and her sisters-in-law.
Mm-hmm.
So Balaji Rao had a brother called Raghunath Rao,
Okay.
and his wife was Anandi Bai,
Mm-hmm.
and the cousin was Sadashiv Rao, and his
Okay.
wife was Parvati Bai.
Okay.
Gopika Bai always was under this fear that the Peshwa's power
Mm-hmm.
will be taken away by Sadashiv Rao
Ah,
or Raghunath
okay.
Rao.
Okay.
So she would constantly try to, constantly humiliate the wives. She couldn't say
Mm-hmm.
anything to the brothers,
Mm-hmm.
and the
Right.
brothers were actually very close to each
Mm-hmm.
other.
Mm-hmm.
So instead, she would keep humiliating the Parvati Bai and Anandi Bai.
Mm-hmm.
So Parvati Bai, from the age of 10 years, realized that she will have to make her place in Shanivar Vata.
Right.
And she could not, there was no way that she could fight Gopika Bai.
Mm-hmm.
So she remained quiet, but she slowly made her place by working in Shanivarwada, by whatever responsibility was given to her,
Right.
she would conduct it very well, and proved herself to be a very good administrator.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing about Parvati Bai was she was thirsty for knowledge,
Okay.
but that was a time when women were not educated. They were not allowed to be
Mm-hmm.
educated.
Mm-hmm.
But my research says that she was educated.
Okay.
My research also says that she was skillful with weapons.
Okay.
But how this happened is not explained.
Okay.
So, what I assumed,
Mm-hmm.
here is where you will say that the fiction has come
Right.
in. So, okay. So I assume that since women of those kind of homes, Shanivar
Mm-hmm.
Vada was one of the that Peshwa's family was the first family, actually number
Mm-hmm.
one family
Mm-hmm.
in the Maratha Empire. So women of those kind of households were never allowed to in any way have interaction with men
Men.
from
Right.
outside, right?
Right.
So if anybody had taught her, it had to be her husband,
Mm.
is what I assumed. And how it was done is something which is, a story, the tale
Right,
in the
right,
book,
right.
right? So here was this woman who had already made her place very
Mm-hmm,
quietly
mm-hmm,
in Shanivar Vada,
mm-hmm,
and she also had educated herself through her own means and was also a warrior.
mm-hmm.
And the other thing was, Gopika Bai, when she had her first son Vishwas Rao,
Okay.
she was ill for several months.
Mm-hmm.
So it was Parvati Bai who took that baby and
Oh,
literally raised that boy.
okay.
So much so that Vishwas Rao would call her Ai,
Uh-huh,
but he would call his mother Ai
uh-huh.
Saab,
Acha,
like
okay.
Bai Saab. That
Uh-huh,
was the usually the respectful title given to the Maratha ladies, Bai
uh-huh,
Saab.
uh-huh,
He would call his mother Ai Saab.
uh-huh.
And this was also a point of jealousy with Gopika Bai. Why
Okay.
is he so close to Parvati Bai and not to me?
Uh-huh,
Right? Okay. So when the it was decided that Sadashiv Rao will lead the Maratha army to Delhi,
mm-hmm,
uh, it was also decided that she will accompany Parvati Bai will accompany him
mm-hmm.
for many reasons. One
Okay.
of them was this, that a campaign like this
Mm-hmm.
meant a lot of logistics.
Okay.
So supply of food,
Mm-hmm,
not only for the people, not only for the men, but for the animals.
mm-hmm.
Elephants and
Right,
horses
right.
and even bullocks, who
Mm-hmm.
would pull the cannons. Those
Right,
huge, heavy
right.
cannons had to be pulled,
Mm-hmm,
right? So fodder for them, supply of weapons,
mm-hmm.
right, and supply of medicines.
Right.
So all these reasons,
Mm-hmm,
this was the kind. It was a huge logistics.
mm-hmm.
So Sadashivrao was happy that Parvati Bai agreed that she will accompany him, because she told him, "I will be your munib,
Okay.
I'll be your clerk,
Mm-hmm,
and I will make sure that all these logistics are in place, and you don't have to worry about them. You can
okay.
train your soldiers and you can plan your strategies."
Mm-hmm.
And she did prove to be a very,
Right.
very able administrator. Even during the siege, when food was so scarce, she was very resourceful.
Okay.
uh, there was no gold, there was no money to buy food, from the locals.
Mm-hmm.
So do you know what she said?
Okay.
She told Sadashiv, tell all the women to give their jewelry. They
Okay.
donated their jewelry, which was minted into coins, which were melted and minted into coins, and that was used to buy food. So she proved to be very, very resourceful.
Mm-hmm.
She also proved to be very astute when it came to politics.
Okay.
You see, from childhood, she had faced the politics
Sure.
in Shanivar Vada.
Mm-hmm.
So she was able to understand what was happening
Mm-hmm.
around them,
Mm-hmm.
even when Sadashiv Rao was not able to understand it.
Mm-hmm.
And she would advise him as to
Okay.
how he should proceed.
Mm.
She knew a long time ago that the Maratha Sardars were not loyal to them.
Okay.
But
Oh, okay.
there was, but she, and they resented her
Mm-hmm.
also, because she would advise Sadashiv Rao, and the Maratha Sardars felt, why this woman? Why does he
Hmm.
give so much importance to this woman? So they were also constantly against her. So she realized that these people may not prove to be loyal, and what she thought
Came to be
was
true.
the truth.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, that is what happened.
Right, right.
So this is the kind of woman she was.
Mm-hmm.
When she came back to Pune
Mm-hmm.
after the battle, she decided that she had not seen her husband dead body.
Right.
In fact, uh, there is a lot of confusion about Sadashiv Rao's dead body, whether it was finally found or not.
Mm-hmm.
But there were a lot of people, a lot of soldiers told them that they had seen him fall. But she refused to believe that Sadashiv Rao was dead.
Okay.
And so she refused to live the life of a widow.
Mm-hmm.
She would not wear the widow's, they used to wear this maroon colored uh, saris. She refused to wear that. She refused to, cut her hair,
Mm-hmm.
shave her head basically. And she refused to eat the kind of food that widows were given once a day and things like that. So as a result, Gopika Bai and the people and the other Sardars, the ones who had come back,
Mhm.
they spread a lot of rumors about her. They ostracized her firstly.
Mhm.
Socially, she was
Mhm.
ostracized.
Mhm. Mhm.
And they spread a lot of rumors about her.
Mhm.
And when I was doing my research, I did come across, rumors that maybe she had passed information to the enemy, something like that. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Which was which was completely unbelievable because she had
Ridiculous, of course.
you know, and no connection
Mhm.
basically with the enemy. So she couldn't possibly have done that.
Mhm.
But try to understand the mindset of those Maratha Sardars who were traitors.
Mhm.
They were afraid that Parvati Bai, if she opens her mouth,
Mhm.
if she tells people that we had run away from the battlefield, imagine what would happen.
Right.
So it was a kind of self-defensive attack on
Uh-huh.
her.
Put the blame on her so that blame does not come on
Put the
them.
blame on her. Exactly.
Right.
Gopika Bai.
Uh-huh.
Gopika Bai lost her son, and it
Oh,
was completely her decision to send the son.
mhm.
Why did she send the son?
Right.
She was so afraid that if Sadashivrao he won the battle,
Uh-huh.
he will take the throne of Delhi. शी
Okay.
वांटेड कि उसका बेटा बैठे उस पे,
अच्छा.
इसीलिए उसने बोला कि विश्वास राव को आपको लेके जाना पड़ेगा.
ठीक है.
And that was also another reason she was very happy Parvati Bai was going, because Parvati Bai would look after her son.
Mhm.
But it was a very tragic decision she took because she lost her son, and she blamed Parvati Bai for it. That is the worst thing.
Right.
But Parvati Bai, her personality, there was such stability in her personality.
Mhm.
Despite all these hardships,
Mhm.
despite all the tragedy in her life,
Mhm.
she still kept her loyalty to the Maratha Samrajya, the Maratha Empire alive.
Right.
And I think that is the reason she left her home. She went out into the people, to the Maratha people, to spread this message
Mhm.
that whatever happened at Panipat,
Right.
your men were
Mhm.
loyal, your men fought.
Wow.
So you should be proud of your warriors.
Mhm. Mhm.
And our next generation and the generation after that should remain loyal to the Maratha
Wow.
Samrajya.
This is
So I think,
incredible.
yeah, this makes it into a very extraordinary personality, I believe.
Mhm. Mhm. You know, l- like when you were talking about this, no, that Parvati Bai was already aware about the Sardars of Marathas, that they were going to, um, they were going against the main lead, Sadashivrao and all. I remember that
Hmm.
psychological fact that, men are very simple. वो बहुत भोले होते हैं. They are very,
Ah,
they trust easily. And but women, they have this sixth sense, they say, and they can easily
hmm.
figure it out कि भाई कौन अपना है कौन अपना नहीं है, and they advise men to follow this, but men again, ये सदियों से चला आ रहा है, they don't follow it and they face the consequences.
Yes,
Right. uh,
you are very right.
Right. We'll move forward. Okay. But before that, I want to show this book. Okay. And I want to give shout out to the person who designed the cover. The first look I had the cover, I was like, wow. I mean, just look at it. This is so overwhelming. So yeah, whoever wants to buy, link is in the bio. So now I have this question. You chose to write about Parvati Bai. Why was it not written before? किसी ने क्यों नहीं लिखने का सोचा? What can be the reason why someone did not write about Parvati Bai?
That is again a question that intrigued me as well,
Mm-hmm.
because Ankit, what I feel is that other than the women that historians have focused on, like Lakshmi Bai, Ahilya Bai, I mean, they also did, um, you know, they had
Extraordinary
wonderful
works.
lives and they were
Right.
extraordinary people, yeah,
Right.
extraordinary women. But
Right.
other than them, if they were there, I'm sure there were more. So
Mm-hmm.
my search is always for those women who have not been mentioned so much in history, but who I would say laid the foundation of
Mm-hmm.
the India we know today. You know,
Right. Wow.
so yeah. So when I was researching for Parvatibai, I found it very strange
Mm-hmm.
that there was very sketchy details about Parvatibai.
Okay.
You know, in all the books that I read, there was a
Mm-hmm.
lot about Gopikabai and
Mm-hmm.
about her policies. So
Okay.
I was very intrigued. And if you go to Pune and you try to look for Parvati Bai Samadhi, you will find a very simple kind of a Samadhi in one corner of Pune.
Okay.
So I was wondering that why Parvati
Mm-hmm.
Bai, there is full historical, proof that
Mm-hmm.
Parvati Bai went to Panipat
Mm-hmm.
with Sadashivrao.
Mm-hmm.
She was there during the battle, and
Mm-hmm.
she was one of the few survivors.
Mm-hmm.
My question was, there is so much discussion and debate about
Right.
this defeat,
Mm-hmm.
of the Marathas, because this was not just a defeat of Marathas, this was a
Right.
defeat for India.
Right.
Because if the Marathas had won,
Mm-hmm.
possibly we would have the Hindawa Samrajya, and the
Sure.
British would have never been able to fill this vacuum and rule us for 300 years.
Mm-hmm.
So this was a turning point, a watershed, this Third
Mm-hmm.
Battle of Panipat.
Mm-hmm.
That is why there's a lot of debate, lot of discussions by historians
Mm-hmm.
as to why the Marathas lost the battle.
Mm-hmm.
But I found it very strange that nobody questioned Parvatibai.
Mm.
Why? What was the reason?
Okay.
And that is what made me, you know, dig out more and more about her
Mm-hmm.
from different sources.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what actually eventually, made me create this story.
Okay. This is amazing. We are almost at 1 hour mark. I think we'll have to sum up the conversation. Although, yeah, like you are a storehouse of information, I can dig up more and more and more and more. Okay. One last thing. Your new book has come, Anatomy of Affection. If you could share some light about that book.
So the anatomy of affection is something that I tried, which was very different from what I've been writing till now. I've been writing
Ah,
a lot of
right, right.
historical narratives and thrillers as well. So anatomy of affection is neither a historical narrative nor is it a thriller.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Uh, it is a book about relationships. It is a
Okay.
book. Uh, so the word affection, a lot of people think affection is love and
Mm-hmm.
also think that love is more powerful than affection,
Okay.
but I disagree, because
Okay.
affection is something that is inherent in
Mm-hmm.
every human nature.
Mm-hmm.
Affection is something that directs the love of a mother and a child,
Mm-hmm.
the love of a soldier for his country,
Mm-hmm.
the love of a person for him or herself, self love,
Mm-hmm.
the love of people for humanity, especially
Mm-hmm.
for the downtrodden.
Mm-hmm.
All these different kinds of love come from the mother lode, which is affection.
Wow.
So when I say anatomy of affection, I have tried to analyze this precious emotion
Mm-hmm.
and tried to give you stories which all lead to affection
Mm-hmm.
eventually.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an anthology of 10 stories. The protagonists, they come from different social backgrounds.
Right.
They are of different age groups,
Mm-hmm.
different genders,
Mm-hmm.
but the circumstances which surround them, they respond to those circumstances through the affection that is there in their souls.
Wow.
And I believe that anybody who reads it would find a echo in their own souls, because
Mm-hmm.
the emotions in it are something that they have all felt at some time in their life.
Mm-hmm. Right. This is wonderful. And out of affection, we are going to give away one copy of the book Anatomy of
Oh, lovely.
Affection.
Great.
So, okay. Thank you so much for the conversation. It was lovely talking to you. I hope we'll connect
Thank
again,
you.
and this time an offline podcast, and record something wonderful, maybe about Changiz Khan.
I'd love to. And I'm so happy to be here with you, Ankit. And I think we had a wonderful conversation.
Thank
Thank
you
you
so
so
much.
much.
I am feeling great. After I had college today, and after a boring day, I had such a wonderful conversation. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to having more interactions with you on your podcast.
Uh-huh.
So, let's look forward to that.
Right,
Thank you
right.
so much.
Thank you.